I'm Grace, a 52-year-old office worker. My husband, Thomas, has been bedridden for 7 years following a car accident. He's left paralyzed from the waist down and can't move without a wheelchair. He was in his car for work, waiting at a red light, when he was rear-ended by someone who it seems dozed off while also on the job. When I received the call from Thomas's office, I rushed to the hospital. Thomas was conscious and spoke to me, but he said he couldn't feel his legs. At that time, I never imagined he would end up bedridden. When the doctor explained the situation to me, it was the first time I felt the severity of it. He mentioned there might be lasting damage. After discharge to the lower half of Thomas's body, Thomas's life after being discharged about 2 months later completely changed. The bathroom was the most challenging part since he couldn't walk freely. Even sitting on the commode we had in the room was a struggle. However, my easygoing husband, though distressed by his physical limitations, seemed to relish the fact that he didn't have to work anymore. All the expenses were covered by the insurance of the company of the person who hit him. He was also approved for workers' comp, and disability benefits were paid out. We used that Thomas's room remodel money to remodel Thomas's room. The funds were helpful for installing things like the commode and grab bars. Now that I'm getting disability benefits, I can take things easy. Our 20-year-old college-going son, seeing his dad talk so carelessly, responded, "Dad, did you intentionally get hit or something?" An understandably angry Thomas retorted, "Why would you say something like that? Do you think I wanted to be like this?" While bedridden, Thomas's upper body moves just fine, and he speaks up whenever he wants. Thomas's life changed drastically, but it also added a lot to my plate. While Thomas never really did household chores even before, bathing him became quite a task since he can't bathe by himself. While I'm at work, he watches TV or watches videos on his smartphone lying in bed. For lunch, he eats the packed lunch I prepare for him in bed. He goes to physical therapy once a week, and I accompany him to and fro. Thomas hates the therapy and often acts like a child, making excuses not to go. "I'm not feeling well today. Maybe I should skip the hospital if you're not feeling good." "Shouldn't you go to the hospital and get checked out? You can do therapy while you're there." With no counter, he reluctantly goes. Upon returning, he often complains about the therapist for a while. There's no need for him to be so strict with me. I feel like he enjoys torturing me. Though the therapy did help, and Thomas began to feel some strength in his legs, he was convinced it was his feeling normal doing after living like this for 7 years. It began to feel normal. The doctor says that with continued therapy and muscle building, he could eventually walk, but Thomas doesn't seem too happy about this progress. "I'm fine as I am. I don't think I'll get any better." I thought he said this because he didn't want to push himself in therapy. Then one day, my sister shared something curious over the phone. My sister, who delivers lunches, mentioned seeing someone who looked just like Thomas at one of her delivery locations. This man resembling my husband was limping, but his face looked identical. I chuckled and said, "Maybe you saw a look-alike." There are plenty of older men who look like Thomas out there. But my sister was unconvinced and added, "Thomas has that unique buzz cut style, right? Not many have that." After his accident, Thomas had shaved his head, and now it had grown into a sort of buzz cut style. It seemed unlikely she'd mistake someone else for him, given my sister often sees Thomas when delivering lunch on days I'm too busy. Growing slightly anxious, my sister offered, "I have a pet monitoring camera at home. How about I install it for you?" It appears my sister is suggesting setting up a hidden camera for me. I didn't think it was necessary to go that far, but since my sister strongly recommended it, I decided to ask for her help. Actually, I had some suspicions about my husband Thomas. Despite Thomas being unable to go out on his own, I found his shoes left out by the front door. I usually put them away in the shoe cabinet when he comes home, so it's unusual for them to be out. Furthermore, my husband, who usually lounges around at home in sweatpants, told me he wanted some fashionable clothes. If I aim to recover enough to wear fashionable clothes and go out, it'll motivate me to work hard in therapy, he'd said. I agreed with Thomas and bought him the clothes, but sometimes I found them thrown on the floor as if he had tried them on. Thomas usually couldn't change clothes on his own, so I helped him. After hearing my sister's story, I started to think that maybe he was changing into these clothes and sneaking out on the days Thomas went for therapy. I asked my sister to install a hidden camera. Sister had a spare key to her house since she sometimes brings lunch over for Thomas, so setting up the camera was easy. I could watch the footage in real time on my smartphone and even record it. While a part of me wanted to trust Thomas, I also needed to know the truth given the suspicious circumstances. I soon found out the truth. I casually checked my smartphone 2 days after Sister installed the camera to see what Thomas was up to while I was at work. To my surprise, Thomas was standing up by himself and changing his clothes. Although he walked with a limp, he seemed somewhat elated as he tossed aside his sweats and changed into his new fashionable outfit. After getting dressed, he checked himself out in the mirror, adjusted his buzz-cut hair, and left the room. Seeing Thomas like this shocked me, and I couldn't focus on my work that day. After all the effort and care I provided daily since Thomas's accident, I couldn't bear the thought of him sneaking around behind my back. During my lunch break, I called Sister and told her what I saw. "Sister, you were right. Thomas has been sneaking out. He even hid from me the fact that he can now dress himself." Distraught, Sister comforted me. Considering she had seen him at some woman's house, I was filled with anger and humiliation. Since Thomas's accident, I had spent almost all my time taking care of him, sacrificing my own needs. Sister, sensing my emotions, spoke gently on the other end of the line. "We should sit down and talk about this soon. We need to give Thomas a piece of our mind." Her words helped me regain some composure. Before ending the call, she emphasized, "Don't confront Thomas yet. Let him think he's getting away with it for now." Had she not advised me, I might have confronted Thomas as soon as I got home that evening. When I returned home, Thomas was nonchalantly lying on the bed, watching TV. Remembering him dressing up and leaving made my blood boil, but I kept my cool and acted as usual, unaware of the secret filming. Thomas continued his secret outings in style. In the meantime, Sister did some snooping during her breaks and sent me pictures of him entering a young woman's house several times. About a month after setting up the hidden camera, Sister and I met to strategize on confronting Thomas. I told her I had work, so we had until the evening for our planning session. While discussing with Sister and checking Thomas's current actions on my smartphone, he began changing clothes right in front of us. Seeing that he was getting ready to head out again and nervously sitting on the bed, Sister remarked, "I wonder if he's invited his mistress over to our place today." I thought even Thomas wouldn't go that far. But considering his physical limitations, it might be more convenient for him. After a while, we heard the doorbell ring, and Thomas got up and walked towards it, not even using a cane. Sister's prediction seemed about to come true, and my heart raced. The next moment, a young woman entered Thomas's room. The instant Sister saw her, she exclaimed, "That's her. The one I saw with Thomas." Sister and I immediately left the cafe and rushed to my house. Seeing Thomas and his mistress together in real time was both helpful yet startling. When Sister and I checked my phone once more just outside our house, we were met with a shocking sight. Thomas and the woman were embracing each other. Watching Thomas, who supposedly was paralyzed from the waist down, in such a passionate embrace was unbelievable. Sister and I stormed into the house, heading straight for Thomas's room. When my sister and I walked into the room, my husband Thomas and his mistress were still locked in an embrace. From shock, but they quickly pulled apart. In his flustered state, Thomas said to me, "Oh, you're back early." The young mistress tried to flee the room, but my sister blocked her path. "We'd like to have a word with you. Please stay," I confronted my standing husband. "So, your leg's been fine all along. You really had me fooled." As I said this, Thomas melodramatically grabbed his leg and collapsed onto the bed. "No, you've got it all wrong. She's a masseuse. She was helping me with my leg pain." I did get a massage, and it feels better, but it still hurts. The mistress nodded in agreement to Thomas's explanation. My astounded sister pointed at a hidden camera and scolded Thomas. Everything was caught on that camera. It sure didn't look like a massage to me. Realizing the existence of the camera, Thomas became defensive. Planting a hidden camera? That's an invasion of privacy. You can't use that as evidence. My sister, showing a great deal more vigor than one would expect from someone who's supposedly bedridden, yelled at Thomas while showing him several photos. The pictures clearly showed Thomas entering a suburban house with a mistress. Another picture captured Thomas without any cane, walking by himself. After getting out of a taxi, Thomas was silent, evidently unable to refute the evidence in the photographs. "When were you able to walk again?" the mistress answered in place of the silent Thomas. "About a year ago." Thomas called me, saying he was feeling better and asked if we could see each other again. I was taken aback by the phrase "see each other again" and asked the mistress, "Wait, have you and my husband been seeing each other before?" She resignedly told us everything. She was Thomas's colleague, and they had been involved about 10 years ago, but their relationship ended due to an accident 7 years ago. However, with Thomas's improved leg condition, he insisted on rekindling their relationship. From Thomas's point of view, he would still receive his disability benefits, and now with his mobility back, probably wanted some fun. As for the mistress, she had a history with him, so they were comfortable with each other, a win-win situation for both. Realizing that Thomas had not only lied about his leg, but had also been cheating for over 10 years was a lot to take in. The thought of all the sacrifices I had made for such a man made me want to laugh out of sheer disbelief. Seeing my speechless reaction, my sister shouted at Thomas, "Thomas, you are the lowest of the low. Do you have any idea how hard it's been for Catherine since your accident?" Thomas was speechless and looked paralyzed on the bed. The mistress, thinking she had no role in this anymore, remarked, "I'm going to leave. I won't see this man again. So don't worry. He always complained about this and that, and it was too much for me." As the mistress tried to leave, I grabbed her hand and said, "Since I don't need this man anymore, could you take him with you? Of course, I'll be expecting compensation from you as well." Seeing my serious expression, she hurriedly left the house. Thomas, left behind, seemed to realize the gravity of the situation and pleaded, "I'm sorry, please don't abandon me." My sister scoffed and said, "You're all healed now. You can live on your own, right?" Holding back tears, I added, "Of course, we'll be getting a divorce, and I'll expect compensation from you." In a panic, Thomas jumped out of bed and repeatedly bowed down in apology. Each time, his leg, which was supposed to be immobile, folded perfectly as he bowed down. Clearly, his leg had been fine for a long time. Later on, I moved out and started living in an apartment. My college-going son, Harry, had been living on his own, but when I brought up the topic of divorce, he understood. Harry occasionally took care of my husband in my stead. And it seemed he had been suspicious upon seeing his father suddenly stand up. Harry was suspicious alone. However, he never imagined that his father had been cheating on me. He was livid when he learned about the affair. In addition to the divorce, there was the issue of alimony. We got a lawyer involved, but things just got messy. Even though my husband was well, he had been collecting disability payments, which landed him in more trouble. Now, on top of the alimony I was owed, he had to repay those disability funds. Though my husband hadn't been working, he had received a significant sum from an insurance payout after an accident, so he had some assets. I was able to get my fair share of alimony and the marital assets. From what the lawyer told me, it seems he's considering going back to work. But after loafing around for 7 years, I wonder what he can really do now. He made his bed, and now he needs to lie in it. Now that I've left my husband and live alone, I'm enjoying my free time. In the past, my life revolved around my husband, leaving little time for myself. I want to make up for all those years I lost caring for him. Over those 7 years, it's also heartwarming to see Harry checking up on me from time to time. I look forward to seeing how my dependable son continues to grow.